I was 26 when I started working night shift security at a backcountry ski resort nestled deep in the Cascade Range. The job wasn't glamorous, and I knew that going in. Most nights I sat in a heated booth near the main lodge, monitored a bank of grainy security cameras, and walked perimeter checks every few hours to make sure pipes hadn't frozen and doors remained locked. The pay was decent enough to cover rent and student loans, and the isolation didn't bother me the way it seemed to bother others. I'd always preferred quiet. Winter up there meant long stretches of silence, broken only by the howl of wind through the peaks and the occasional crack of ice splitting on the lake. That February, a storm system moved in and refused to leave. Day after day, snow fell in thick curtains that erased the horizon line completely. Roads were intermittently closed, stranding travelers and turning the highway into a white tunnel barely wide enough for plows. Lifts stayed shut. The few guests who'd been staying at the lodge evacuated early on the second day, packing their luxury SUVs and heading back towards civilization before conditions worsened. By the third night of the storm, even most of the staff had gone home, taking advantage of a brief window when the main access road reopened. It was just me, the assistant manager, sleeping fitfully in the main office upstairs, and the wind that never stopped screaming. The cold that night was absolute, the kind that makes your teeth ache and your eyes water the moment you step outside. When I pushed through the side door for my midnight perimeter check, the air burned my lungs with every breath. Snow crunched under my boots with a sound like breaking glass, each step echoing in the muffled silence that heavy snow creates. My flashlight beam barely penetrated 10 feet before the swirling white swallowed it completely, turning the world into a claustrophobic tunnel of light and shadow. Visibility was close to zero. I kept one gloved hand on the lodge's rough exterior wall as I moved, counting steps to stay oriented, marking my progress by the windows I passed. Halfway through the check, as I rounded the north corner toward the staff parking lot, I noticed something off. A vehicle I didn't recognize sat alone at the far end of the lot, covered in a thick layer of snow but clearly recent. The shape was wrong for any of the staff vehicles I knew. This was a larger truck, dark-colored beneath the white, with an extended cab and oversized tires. The engine was off, no lights visible, but something about it drew my attention immediately. As I got closer, I realized what it was. The snow on the hood was melted in patches, revealing dark metal underneath. Warm, not long parked warm where the engine cools gradually over hours, recently shut off warm, the way metal stays hot for maybe 15 or 20 minutes after being driven. I approached slowly, wiping snow from the driver's side window with my glove, my breath fogging against the glass. Inside, the truck was empty. No keys in the ignition, no personal items visible on the seats or dashboard, no phone left behind on the center console. The driver's seat was adjusted far back, like someone tall had been sitting there, easily over 6 feet. I tried the door handle, expecting it to be locked. It wasn't. The latch clicked open easily, and the dome light flickered on, casting weak yellow light across the interior. I leaned in and touched the driver's seat with the back of my hand, carefully, as if the seat itself might be dangerous. Still slightly warm, body heat not yet dissipated despite the cold. My breath fogged in front of me as I straightened up and scanned the lot more carefully. Fresh tire tracks led in from the main access road, deep grooves in the snow marking where the truck had entered and parked. But the tracks were already half filled with new snow, the storm working quickly to erase evidence. I circled the vehicle slowly, looking for footprints leading away, not toward the lodge entrance where someone seeking shelter would go. Not toward the tree line if they'd been confused or disoriented. Nowhere. The wind screamed past, loud enough to drown out thought, loud enough to make me question what I was seeing. I called out, voice cracking in the cold, words barely audible even to myself. "Hello? Anyone out here? Do you need help?" The storm swallowed the words immediately, giving nothing back. I pulled my radio from my belt with numb fingers, fumbling with the controls until I found the right channel. Static crackled for a long moment before the assistant manager's voice came through, groggy and annoyed at being woken. I explained the situation as clearly as I could. Unknown vehicle in the staff lot, warm engine, recently arrived, no driver visible, no footprints leading away. He was silent for a moment, and I could picture him rubbing his eyes, trying to process what I was telling him. Finally, he told me to log it in the security book and finish my rounds. If someone wandered off drunk from town, they'd turn up eventually, probably embarrassed and half frozen. If it was abandoned, we'd deal with it in the morning when visibility improved and we could actually see what we were doing. But something felt wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. The lack of footprints wasn't just unusual or strange, it was impossible. No one leaves a vehicle and vanishes into the snow without leaving tracks, not even in a storm this heavy. Even if wind filled the prints partially, there would be depressions, shadows, some indication of direction. I circled the truck twice more, scanning with my flashlight, getting down on one knee to check under the vehicle in case someone had collapsed. Nothing. Then I saw them. Prints. Not leading away from the truck toward any logical destination, but leading toward it. From the woods. From the dark tree line that bordered the eastern edge of the parking lot. The tracks emerged from the tree line about 30 yards away, a single file line pressed deep into the snow, each print clearly defined despite the wind.
They approached the truck at an angle, not straight but curved, as if the person had been circling or observing before committing to approach. The prints moved around the truck in a complete circuit, passing the hood, the passenger side, the tailgate, then stopping at the driver's door. After that, nothing. No continuation back toward the woods, no return path, no trail leading toward the lodge or the road or anywhere else. Just a clean end, as if whoever made them had simply ceased to exist at that exact spot, had been erased mid-step. My hands started shaking, and it wasn't from the cold anymore. I followed the prints back toward the woods, moving slowly, placing my boots carefully to avoid disturbing them, my flashlight beam trembling despite my efforts to hold it steady. The trees stood black and skeletal against the white, branches heavy with snow, creating an impenetrable wall of shadow. Snow hissed through the branches like static on a dead radio channel. As I reached the tree line, I stopped, my boots inches from where forest met clearing. The footprints didn't start at the edge where they should have. They started about 10 feet inside the woods, in a small clearing between two large pines, their branches forming a natural cathedral overhead. No approach visible, no origin point. The tracks just suddenly existed, fully formed, as if the person had dropped from the sky or materialized from nothing. I stepped carefully into the clearing, snow immediately climbing to mid-shin, much deeper here where the trees blocked wind but allowed accumulation. My light swept across the disturbed snow where the prints began. There was a depression, a standing point where someone had been stationary for a long time, weight shifting slightly from foot to foot, creating a wider, compacted area. But no trail leading into that standing point. No broken branches that would indicate someone pushing through the underbrush. No disturbance in the snow beyond that single focal point. Then I noticed something else, something that made my stomach clench.
A second set of depressions, smaller and shallower, about 15 feet deeper into the woods, barely visible beyond the reach of my flashlight. These didn't look like footprints exactly. They looked like something heavy had been pressed into the snow and then carefully removed, leaving geometric indentations. 4 of them, evenly spaced in a rectangular pattern, almost like the legs of a large piece of furniture or equipment. I took a cautious step closer, my light beam narrowing on the strange marks. The wind suddenly died. Complete silence dropped over the woods like a blanket, so abrupt it felt physical, oppressive. And that silence, perfectly clear and unmistakable, I heard it. faint crunch of snow. Not from the direction I'd come, not from the parking lot, from deeper in the woods, from the darkness beyond where my light could penetrate. I froze mid-step, every muscle locking, my breath caught in my throat. My light cut through the darkness ahead, illuminating nothing but trees and falling snow and the infinite black spaces between trunks. The sound came again, deliberate, steady. Footsteps, but wrong somehow. The rhythm off, the weight distribution uneven, almost limping, but not quite. Something moving through snow, but not sinking the way a person should. I backed up slowly, inches at a time, keeping the light pointed forward, my other hand fumbling for the radio on my belt. My fingers were too numb, too clumsy. I couldn't get the radio free. It crackled with static on its own, loud in the silence, and then a burst of distorted sound that might have been a voice or might have been interference. Before I could key the mic, something moved at the edge of my beam. A shape, tall and dark, partially obscured by a thick tree trunk, standing motionless about 20 feet ahead. Human-sized, roughly, but the proportions seemed wrong, stretched vertically, the shoulders too narrow or the torso too long. I couldn't make out details through the snow and darkness, just a silhouette that stood perfectly still, as if waiting for me to acknowledge it, waiting to see what I would do. My throat tightened, making it hard to breathe. I forced words out, voice barely above a whisper, cracking with cold and fear. "Identify yourself. Who's there?" No response. The shape didn't move, didn't react, just stood and watched. I took another step backward, then another, my boots finding purchase in the snow by instinct, not thought. The shape remained still, a vertical shadow among shadows. My heartbeat hammered in my ears, drowning out everything else, reducing the world to that single dark figure and the space between us. I turned, breaking eye contact with the shape, and started back toward the truck, moving quickly but not running yet. Some primal part of my brain insisting that running would trigger pursuit, that showing fear would invite attack. Behind me, I heard the footsteps again, faster now, definitely closer, the uneven rhythm quickening into something that might have been running. I broke into a full sprint. Snow grabbed at my boots, each step a fight against accumulation and cold and gravity. My flashlight beam jerked wildly, painting the trees and sky in chaotic strokes. The truck appeared ahead, dark and solid, and somehow safe despite being the center of this wrongness. Beyond it, the distant glow of the lodge windows, warm light bleeding into the storm. I didn't look back, didn't dare stop to check if I was being followed. My breath came in ragged gasps, lungs burning from the cold, throat raw. I reached the truck and used it as cover, dropping into a crouch behind the bed, finally daring to glance toward the woods, my light shaking violently as I aimed it back the way I'd come. Nothing. The tree line stood empty and silent, branches swaying gently in the resumed wind. Snow fell steadily, already beginning to fill my own frantic footprints, erasing evidence of my panic. I waited, lungs heaving, searching the darkness for movement, for any sign of the shape I'd seen. Minutes passed, the wind picked up again, and with it came the oppressive howl that had defined the storm, normal sound returning as if the brief silence had never existed. I keyed my radio with numb fingers, pressing the button multiple times before my hand steadied enough to hold it.
"I need you outside. Now! Something's wrong!" My voice shook, words tumbling out too fast. The assistant manager's reply came back irritated and skeptical, asking what I meant by wrong, saying he wasn't going out in this storm unless it was an actual emergency. I told him it was, told him to bring the big flashlight and the emergency kit. He went quiet for a moment, then agreed, his tone shifting from annoyed to concerned. I stayed behind the truck until I saw the lodge's side door open and the flashlight beam emerge, cutting through the storm. Only then did I move, jogging across the lot to meet him, glancing back over my shoulder every few steps, half expecting to see something following, emerging from the woods into the open. We went back together, him leading with a larger, more powerful flashlight, me following close enough that our shoulders almost touched. Neither of us spoke. The truck sat exactly as I'd left it, doors still open, dome light still weakly illuminating the interior. We examined the footprints leading from the woods first, following my description. He saw them too, confirmed they led to the truck, and then stopped. No question about it. Prints leading in, nothing leading out. His face was tight, jaw clenched, but he didn't voice whatever he was thinking. When I tried to show him where the prints started in the clearing, where the standing point had been, the wind had erased them. Fresh snow had filled the depressions, smoothed the surface, made it look untouched. The standing point was gone, buried under new accumulation. He shook his head slowly, beam sweeping across the clearing. "Storm's messing with your head. Probably some drunk from town who hitched a ride out here and wandered off looking for the lodge. We'll call it in tomorrow when the sheriff can actually get up here." But his voice lacked conviction. I could see him glancing at the woods repeatedly, flashlight lingering on the shadows between the trees, on the dark spaces his beam couldn't reach. We stood there in silence for a moment, the cold seeping through our layers, the wind building again. That's when the truck's headlights turned on.
Both of us jumped, startled by the sudden glare, the light blinding against the white, cutting through the storm like accusation. No sound of a door opening or closing, no movement inside the cab that we could see, just lights, high beams piercing the darkness, aimed toward the woods. The assistant manager swore under his breath and approached the driver's side, moving quickly now, anger replacing fear. I stayed back, every nerve screaming at me to run, to get back to the lodge. He reached the door, pulled it fully open, looked inside, checked under the dash, checked the column, turned to me, face pale in the reflected light. "There's no key in the ignition. The battery shouldn't even have enough charge in this cold to power the lights, let alone turn them on without—" He didn't finish. The radio inside the truck crackled to life, loud in the cold air, volume turned all the way up. Not our security frequency, not a standard channel. Static, thick and distorted, with something underneath, something rhythmic. We both stared at the dashboard speaker, neither of us moving closer. The assistant manager reached into the cab, hand shaking, and turned the radio dial, trying to change the frequency, trying to find silence or a normal station. The static followed, every channel, the same distorted sound, rising and falling like breathing, like something alive using the radio as a voice. Then, clear as ice cracking, a single word emerged from the static. "Stay." Both of us heard it, no question, no ambiguity, a command, or maybe an invitation. His hand jerked back from the radio like it had burned him, and he stumbled backward into the snow. The headlights flickered once, twice, then died, plunging us back into relative darkness, our flashlight suddenly inadequate. My beam swept across the parking lot on instinct, searching for threats. Movement. Something running along the tree line, parallel to our position, fast and low to the ground. Then another shape on the opposite side, near the lodge road. We were being flanked, whatever was out here, coordinating, herding us. The assistant manager grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. "Lodge, right now, go." We ran.
No pretense of calm or professionalism. Pure flight, driven by fear more honest than anything we'd admitted to each other. Behind us, I heard the truck's horn blare once, long and mournful, a sound that had no business existing without hands on the wheel. We made it inside and locked every door, both of us moving fast, checking windows, securing the building like we were preparing for a siege. We barricaded the main entrance with furniture, dragging a heavy desk and 2 filing cabinets against the door. Spent the rest of the night in the security office upstairs, all lights on, every camera feed up on the monitors, watching. The truck sat in the lot, covered in accumulating snow, inert and innocent looking. Nothing moved in the woods, no shapes, no sounds, no repetition of what we'd experienced. By dawn, the storm had finally started to ease, the wind dropping, the snow falling lighter, almost gentle. When the roads cleared enough for travel, sheriff's deputies arrived around noon, 2 cruisers churning through the remaining drifts. We met them outside, exhausted and wired on coffee, and showed them the truck. They ran the plates through their system while we explained what happened. The truck had been reported stolen 3 weeks prior from a town 200 miles north, up near the Canadian border. No leads on the driver, no witnesses, no fingerprints inside when they processed it. Nothing useful, like it had been wiped clean. They towed it away on a flatbed and told us we'd been smart not to go into the woods alone, not to pursue whoever had been out there. One deputy, older and weathered, with lines around his eyes that suggested he'd seen things he didn't talk about, pulled me aside before they left. He asked me quietly what I'd really seen out there, not the official version I'd given for the report, what I actually experienced. I told him everything, leaving nothing out. The footprints that started nowhere, the shape in the woods with wrong proportions, the radio speaking through dead frequencies, the headlights with no key. He didn't laugh.
Didn't dismiss it or suggest I'd been seeing things in the storm. He just nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful and troubled, and said, "Mountains do that sometimes, especially during storms like this. Things get confused up here. Boundaries get thin between what is and what watches. People forget the woods are older than us, that they remember things we never knew." He didn't elaborate, didn't explain what he meant by boundaries or what might be watching. I didn't ask him to. Some questions don't have answers you want to hear. I finished out the season, honoring my contract, but I requested day shifts after that week. Never took another night perimeter check during a storm. The assistant manager quit a month later, took a job managing a hotel in Seattle, somewhere surrounded by people and light. The resort closed the following year, sold to developers who tore down most of the old structures and built luxury condos. I moved on to other work, other places, other jobs that didn't require being alone in the dark. But I still think about that night more often than I'd like. What bothers me most, years later, isn't the fear I felt. Fear makes sense. Fear is healthy. Fear keeps you alive when something dangerous is close. What bothers me is the intentionality behind everything. The way the truck was placed exactly where it would draw attention during a security check. The way the footprints led in but not out, forcing you to follow them back to their source. The way the radio came to life with that single word, perfectly timed. The shapes flanking us when we tried to leave. None of it felt random. None of it felt like chance or coincidence or storm-induced hallucination. It felt like a test, carefully designed and executed. Or a lure, baited with mystery and obligation, waiting to see if we'd step deeper into the woods, deeper into whatever was waiting there. Snowstorms are supposed to be blind chaos, wind and cold and precipitation without purpose or design, just weather, following physical laws. But that night felt different. It felt like the storm had eyes, like something was using the white and the wind as cover, as camouflage.
Like the cold was watching to see what we do, measuring our responses. And when we chose to run instead of investigate further, when we chose survival over curiosity, something in the white decided to let us go. I don't know what we interrupted. I don't know what was using that stolen truck or why, or what made those footprints that defied logic. I don't know what spoke through the radio or what those shapes were in the tree line. I just know we were lucky. Lucky to be cautious, lucky to trust our fear, lucky to leave when we did without looking back too long. Because whatever was out there in the storm that night wasn't lost. It wasn't confused. It wasn't human. It was hunting, patiently and intelligently. And we just barely avoided becoming what it was looking for.